Hi, folks. Tom from the future here. In relation to when this episode was originally recorded. Anyways, a couple quick notes before we get started. In our exuberance at moving on from the Hudnall run, we went a bit, long in this recording. At the start, we state we're going to discuss a 3-parter from Marvel Comics Presents and then get into the 4-issue arc entitled Building Blocks that kicks off the Nicieza run. And we totally do that, but it ended up being over 2 hours in recorded time. So we're splitting things up, and today you'll hear a lot of general thoughts as well as our take on the Rob Liefeld drawn and plotted, which is wild, Fabian Nicieza scripted Marvel Comics Presents issues. Second, Chris's audio isn't great here. We caught and corrected it for most of the conversation around building blocks, but it's not going to be an ideal sound in today's episode. So just kind of letting you know that going in, we think our characteristic charm and wit more than makes up for it. But triple check your inputs, folks, before you press record. That about covers it. The end of the episode will be somewhat abrupt, and the opening of the next episode probably will be too, but that's podcasting, baby. And, hey, we're on the other side of whatever all that we just read was. And this wee 3-parter and the 4-parter you'll hear us chat about in 2 weeks' time. I am excited. On to the episode. Welcome to episode 52 of Why Not Read Alpha Flight with Tom Flynn
and Chris Baker, a podcast where we take your favorite series seriously.
We are recording on Tuesday, August 4th, and we have both seen Spider-Man Brand New Day, which
so good.
Very good. Kind of shocking in its own way in that, I don't feel like we both hit opening weekend that often for any movie at this point, but I don't think there was much of a choice with this one.
It wasn't until I was sitting in the seat to watch the movie that I was like, wait a minute, I have no idea what this movie is about. Wait, who's the bad guy? I have no idea. Let's find out. There was quite a bit of surprise and delight, I think, woven into that. Despite how aggressively reported on and rumored and all that, they did a masterclass with this one in a way they haven't in quite some time, I don't feel. The only way it could possibly have been more impressive was if the bad guy had been Samara Weaving as the White Queen.
Sure. And they dropped that information just before. That would have been actually like CIA, Black Ops level.
As a character, I think that would have been a much more interesting opening into the MCU.
I'm not sure that's entirely accurate. However, we are going to record a Why Not Watch a Movie where we go very much into our thoughts and emotions around all this, which will be up on the Patreon probably next week. So if you want to hear our thoughts on that, maybe sign up for the Patreon and help us pay for a movie ticket to see Doomsday. We don't ask for much.
Oh man, those fees are covering our bandwidth and our web hosting costs. They're not even paying for movie tickets yet.
But hey, they could. However, what you are currently listening to is not a Spider-Man Brand New Day podcast. It is a Alpha Flight podcast, although one could argue it is a brand new day because, we're covering Alpha Flight post James Hudnall.
Yes, we are starting a brand new chapter in Alpha Flight, and I want to make a springtime for Alpha and Canada joke, but it's the end of summer, and that kind of falls flat, doesn't it?
Yeah, that and the amount of comp jokes that have been happening lately on this podcast, I think we've hit our limit for the year. I'd really rather us not do that again.
So you're saying there's too much Hitler lately? And to which I say, too much or...
far too much on our podcast, Elon.
That brings us to the story so far. As we're starting a new era, what has been going on will be referenced as needed in the story because, that seems to be all that the writer is concerning himself with. Alpha Flight is led, as always, by Heather Hudson, a.k.a. Vindicator, widow of team founder and superhero himself, James MacDonald Hudson, a.k.a. Guardian. For the last year of publishing, she has been sidelined by the mystical powerhouse Talisman, a.k.a. Elizabeth Two Youngman, who brought her father Michael, the founding Alpha known as Shaman, back to the team. Speedster twins Northstar and Aurora are now back and without any of that pesky elf stuff anymore.
Actually, Chris, you misspoke. They aren't Speedster twins anymore. While Northstar still has his original power set, Aurora's powers have shifted to include her original speed and flight, but also some nebulous light-generating powers that can heal and stuff. That part's pretty squishy right now.
Also on the team are Mr. Madison Jeffries, a.k.a. Box, a Technomancer mutant, and Diamond Lil, originally of Gamma Flight, but apparently she got a promotion just by hanging out with Alpha Flight. Her deal is that she is Diamond. Not like Emma Frost Diamond, she just can't physically be hurt. She feels pain, but she can't be hurt.
Madison and Heather are engaged, but everyone seems to have forgotten that little tidbit. And Madison and Lil seem to be together, if you know what I mean.
Oh, they are doing it daily, nightly, and ever so rightly, Tom. And of course, it wouldn't be Alpha Flight without our friend, secret agent linebacker superhero, Dr. Walter Lankowski, a.k.a. Sasquatch, back in his human, male, and orange monster forms.
Founding Alpha and Puck is stuck in editorial and writing limbo, it seems. He's been floating around, but has been kept out of the action and off the page for quite a while.
Yeah, they've been kind of teasing him ever since we were in the Dream Queens world back in issue 75, which is almost a year ago in publishing time.
He must be getting tired of sitting in that chair.
Listeners, what you might not be aware of is that we received an email with the subject line, "Is Puck a cuck?" And I just didn't want to engage with that. So there we go. Tom has shoehorned in that whole thing. But, we haven't seen Puck pining for Heather for quite some time. So we'll leave it be. Okay? All right?
Beta Flight exists and is currently made up of Little Kara Kilgrave, formerly 13 years old, but now seems to be written as more like 17 or older. It's a little odd, and I'm coming to accept it. We have to move on from that conception of her. And the mutant twins, Laura Dean, a teleporter of immense power, and Goblin, an animal child that is sort of a rough draft of penance from Generation X.
We also have Gamma Flight, led by the mysterious nemesis, with a capital N, who wears a full-body black and white suit and carries a sword, and nobody, including Department H, knows who she is underneath. The only reason we know she's a she is because of the aforementioned skin-tight suit. Gamma Flight also consists of Wild Child, Chinese twins Silver and Auric, and the mystical Witchfire. Remember that Wild Child and Diamond Lil, as part of what was then called Omega Flight, helped kill Guardian back in issue number 12, and then tried to kill the rest of Alpha Flight in issue number 28.
The Canadian government then reformed Gamma Flight as their new official team, while Alpha Flight was off in space and dealing with mystical stuff that I'm certain a government is ill-equipped to deal with on its own.
Oh, can you imagine the American government in the year of 2026 dealing with something like the Great Beasts or the Sorcerer?
I mean, some would argue that those things are happening and we're just not dealing with them.
This was a fun thing that I thought I was going to bring up impromptu, and you had to go and make it real. Thanks, Tom. I value your friendship.
We kick things off today with a 3-part story spread across 3 issues of Marvel Comics Presents, numbers 51 through 53. Marvel Comics Presents is an anthology book structured such that several different serialized stories would appear in each issue, and they had nothing to do with each other.
I never picked this one up off the racks or in a pull list because as a kid, it didn't tickle my fancy, but as an adult, boy, I found that I dig this a lot more. How about you, Tom?
I think this is great. I think it gives writers the ability to tell shorter stories that maybe just don't need a full issue or don't need multiple issues, so you can kind of drop them in and out of continuity. It's a way to explore specific characters independent of whatever team they might be on at the time. Also, I would imagine it'd be a phenomenal way to break in new talent.
Yes.
To try an artist out, see how they do, see how they react to deadlines, see how they even like work on the page, how they interact with a writer, give a writer some time to work out some ideas. And as we see in this specific story, to really flesh out a character, or very specifically, two characters' interaction and history. And that's something that can be kind of hard to do within the context of a standard comic, because then it turns into flashbacks, it turns into this and that. This is a much more dynamic way of doing it. I in general like the idea of serialized storytelling in this form. Let's keep in mind that's how most of Charles Dickens' novels were written, where they appeared in magazines and quite a few novels over the course were written that way over the course of the 19th century, and even a little bit in the 20th century. We even still get a little bit of that today, where someone writes a story and then they figure out they can make a book of it. It's kind of neat.
You bring the highbrow version of Charles Dickens and serialization. To me, what I'm reminded of is, did you have cable growing up, Tom?
Actually, no, not for a very, very long time. This might explain a few things.
Yeah, I did not have cable for a very long time, but I do remember Nickelodeon on like weekend afternoons. They used to air knockoff Japanimation, which is what we called it at the time.
Uh-huh.
Like fairy tales and things, which were an interesting take on fairy tales that we have seen before. But then as I got older and they were trying to keep me watching Nickelodeon, they aired a show called 15. Did you ever watch that, Tom?
No, I'm not familiar with this at all.
It was a Canadian serialized soap opera that had I think they were half-hour episodes, so they would have 3 or 4 different stories happening at the same time, and they would start and stop independently of each other. So you would find out some low teenager drama story here, and it would move on, and others would drop off and pick up. And that's kind of what Marvel Comics Presents feels like to me.
It also sounds to me like the Canadians were grooming you for quite some time to love you some Alpha Flight.
Well, no, it was Degrassi High without like being contextual. It was very serialized. That is the first like serialized entertainment that I remember in my head, but it wasn't good.
But that's also one of the advantages to this style, is that like you can have a lemon, but then the other two stories being told could be good enough to offset that lemon.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Marvel Comics Presents more as a grown-up coming back to it than as a 14, 15-year-old kid who is looking at it.
I'd be curious to actually look at more at, I probably won't have the time to do this, but to look at what stories they told Marvel Comics Presents, who was doing them, and kind of plotting out, because I wouldn't be shocked if they weren't exactly aimed at the 14-year-old audience.
Correct.
So that's interesting from both a writing, artistic, but also even like a business angle.
It is both a creator showcase and a creator exercise form, where you can take awesome creators and say, do what you want to do, and you can take newbies and say, we need you to do this. And they pull it off. Like Marvel Comics Presents was probably best known to me because this is where the Weapon X storyline was first published, spread across issues 72 to 84.
It's fun. It's kind of a nice way of thinking about the house of ideas and like playing with ideas and throwing spaghetti against the wall and seeing what sticks. And I'm sure that when the Weapon X storyline was developed, they knew it would have an impact. I don't know that they necessarily expected it to define Marvel Comics for 20 fucking years.
Well, and now we say issues 70 to 84, but it published twice a month. So that's actually 6 months worth of issues, not a full year. But boy, I bet that reading that in real time was a lot of fun. Because I definitely read that for the first time as a trade paperback that collected just that story into This Is All You're Reading. But boy, putting that up against what was it, Comet Man that we saw in this one?
Yeah.
Like some weird rando stuff that you've never seen before, you know?
Well, that was a fun little discussion of serialization, but let's get back to the issues at hand. Marvel Comics presents issues number 51 through 53, titled Wolverine. Our issues today don't have cover dates printed on them, but the internet tells us the first two were in June of 1990, and 53 was in July of 1990 as well. I would hope it was July of 1990, or that'd be really confusing. Plot by Rob Liefeld. What the fuck? Script by Fabian Nicieza, art by Rob Liefeld, and inks on number 53 are by Chris Ivey and Joe Rubenstein. Letters by Jade Mode, colors by Brad Van Canta.
I am still hung up on the title here of the story, which the title is just Wolverine. That's a very Rob Liefeld title.
It's not terribly inspired. I don't know. Without knowing a lot of the history of its publishing around it, I don't know if that was a way to goose it because it's Wolverine and that's cool.
No, I really don't think so. I think it was just Rob wanting to tell a Wolverine story.
Fair enough.
And there's a whole lot of I'm not going to say wish casting or fan casting, but like, this whole story feels to me like Rob Liefeld being like, I want to do a Wolverine story. And Fabian Nicieza saying, tell you what, why don't you have him go after Wild Child? There's a whole lot of animal versus man, and you can do that. And Rob is like, fuck yeah! And not much happens in this, does it, Tom?
No, I mean, I don't dislike it, though. For what it is, it's a fun little thing. To be frank, coming off of the Hudnall run,
yeah,
the way that you've structured our reading and our discussion, this is a really nice palate cleanser before we launch into, the Nicieza era and the building blocks 4-issue arc. Like, this kind of resets a little bit while still touching on and being, in some ways, a part of Alpha Flight.
And yet, reading orders don't put this to be read here. This was supposed to be read, I don't know, year and a half, 2 years ago, I think is what they said. Back in the 50s of Alpha Flight. It was a while ago. And that makes a difference because what I'm seeing is, as this is published in real time, I see Fabian Nicieza. What was the term? Scripting?
Yes, script.
I see Fabian Nicieza scripting this and saying, oh, yeah, Wolverine going after Wild Child as he's on a rampage. That's a really cool story idea. This is coming out at the same time as the Alpha Flight issues written by Fabian Nicieza are coming out on the newsstands, exactly the same months. While this story might be set in the past, it is coming out into the public consciousness in the current.
Right. It becomes established, especially in the issues we're about to cover of Alpha Flight proper, that this all took place a year prior to the events of those issues. So in terms of the chronology of Alpha Flight, Alpha's barely back on Earth when this is being covered, and then everything happens after that. But in terms of the reader, it makes more sense. It's more coherent. If these actually published, a year and a half prior, or what you were saying around issue 50 or even issue 60,
mid-50s, yeah,
Wild Child would have been off the map since issue 28, because he's been part of Gamma Flight and because he's been part of the Alpha Flight story. Dropping him back in here and sort of backdating it, I think for the reader makes so much more sense. And not just the Alpha Flight reader, but anyone with any that's paying any attention to the Marvel comics in general would be like, oh yeah, Wild Child's in Alpha Flight. We probably would say he's in Alpha Flight, not knowing he's in Gamma at the time because they're not reading Alpha Flight. But you see what I'm saying? It tracks, and it's also interesting in terms of the world building that it looks like Nicieza is about to do. It's clever as well because of what he does to Wild Child in these 4 issues.
Between these Marvel Comics Presents that Nicieza was involved with, as well as the building blocks story that we're going to be covering, and then also Fabian Nicieza is writing the Avengers at this time. And guess who appears as a guest star in the Avengers for 3 3 issues plus a last panel reveal. That would be Alpha Flight, Tom. There's a whole bunch here where Fabian was like, hey, I'm taking over this book, and I like these guys. And he kind of floods the zone with that in a way that I didn't appreciate until I was able to see how all of these fit together like gears. But, okay, all right. To give some background on what else is going on in the proper 616, the X-Men issue that came out the same month as these Marvel Comics Presents that we're looking at, it was X-Men number 265 and 266, which X-Nerds all know is the first appearance of Gambit on the last page. These issues, and about 50 more on each side of that number, X-Nerds, you are now freaking out, were in a long box that got wet in my basement a few years ago. Every comic I owned that was worth something was in that box as part of my 80s X-Men. I salvaged what I could by taking a big hole punch and popping out what bits of faces and panels I could that would be memorable to people who read them, and I turned them into magnets and necklace cameos. So if anyone wants a fridge magnet of an authentic Rogue in the Savage Land page, hey, hit me up, because I did not destroy a Rogue in the Savage Land issue to make it. I took a destroyed Rogue in the Savage Land issue and made magnets out of it.
You took your pain and you created art. A regular Van Gogh you are.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. This is post-Outback era X-Men, when they are mostly scattered to the winds post-Siege Perilous, which the world at large does not know about anyway. And as far as the world knows, the X-Men died early in 1988 in Uncanny X-Men number 227 in Dallas. So everybody thinks the X-Men are dead. Heather presumably has been thinking that Wolverine has been dead for like 2 years. Yeah, about 2 years now.
That's interesting that we didn't get some sort of reaction or a couple panels about that, as that would have been during the Mantlo run, and that's the kind of thing I think, in principle, I think he would have been interested in throwing in, but at the same time, Mantlo really seemed to treat Alpha Flight as just sort of his thing, and so he may not have even cared at that juncture.
Well, the important part is that as of this moment in publishing history, Heather thinks that Wolverine is dead. This is important to all of the issues today.
The book opens in a back alley in Ottawa, Canada. Guys, there are other cities and other cities with alleys in Canada. It just, anyway.
Oh, now I want to do a bunch of research about alleys in Canada, because, like, you know, there's parts of New York that don't have alleys, so
Yeah, like all of Manhattan.
Yeah. So the trash goes out front, so people notice the trash more. But growing up in a nice Midwestern town, no, there were alleys everywhere. That was how everything got done. So yeah, I totally get the difference.
And that's also how, like, in Chicago, I tend to travel, is I take the alleys. It's much faster.
Having moved through Chicago with Tom, let me tell you, listeners, no, we do walk through the alleys. I remember walking through an alley and coming across Tom's brother-in-law and having a nice conversation, and then seeing a picture on Instagram of the same alley and being like, oh shit, I've been in that alley.
Yep. We find Wolverine stumbling through said dark alley, absolutely pants-pissingly drunk. And, yeah, the captions tell us as much. While stumbling along, he gets jumped by Wildchild, still in his purple leotard combo that he borrowed from Delphine Courtney.
It looks like the workout gear that Delphine Courtney wore.
I mean, they are kind of the same build.
This has really confused me. Moving on. Wildchild here looks less like Iggy Pop in an Elsa wig and more like a skinny, faster Sabretooth. The Liefeld art really pushes Wildchild in that skinnier, faster Sabretooth direction. If anyone else had drawn this, it might have changed the course of Wildchild's whole development. But the baby Sabretooth trope really seems to start here in MCP. There's a lot of the way his teeth and the smile happen in the dark around him. It is shaped in a way that is very Sabretooth as opposed to what we have seen from Wild Child so far.
While Wolverine is in Ottawa on a bender, turns out Wild Child has been on his own kind of bender, a bender that is, in fact, a murder spree.
Oh, dude! That is an amazing rewrite of my script on the fly. Bravo!
So, wouldn't you know it, Wolverine has found a nail to hammer while hammered.
Oh, boo! Listeners, boo this man. Tom added that in after I had written the script, and he is absolutely right. Boo this man.
The next couple of pages show Heather also tracking Wild Child in order to end his rampage. Though she's not hammered, at least we don't think so. There's nothing to suggest that she is, but, Heather's been going through a lot.
If anyone was going to turn to hard drinking on Alpha Flight, I think that Heather would be the one that I would be like, you know what, honey? I get it. Let's work on this for you.
We then get a flashback to 1974 of Wolverine and Wild Child in Department H training against some techno armor thing.
And they call this out as 1974 in the book. So this is not our interpretation.
Wild Child is an absolute asshole to Wolverine throughout the whole thing. I'm pretty sure we haven't heard Wild Child say this many words in all of his appearances put together. I mean, this is really Liefeld and Nicieza digging in and fleshing this character out. And gotta tell you, he is a dick.
Nit to pick. When the X-Men first met Alpha Flight, Wolverine told them all that the flight wasn't recruited until after he left. So he didn't know who they were up against other than JMH, not their numbers or their powers. That's what he said, not their numbers or their powers. This was reconfirmed in Alpha Flight number 51 by Manlow, who had Gary Cody confirm that Wolverine quit before JMH sought out more recruits. So far, the writers of Alpha Flight haven't really delved into this stuff too much, but wow! Does Rob come out of the gate rewriting continuity based on what he thought he remembered instead of what actually happened. And I realize I haven't written this into the script, Tom, but this is why I wanted to do this podcast, is to say that if you were following Alpha Flight, you would see these weird shifts and changes as we move into a more modern era, because what Liefeld establishes here is not what had happened on the page. When you take a very interested young artist into the fold and you suddenly make him so central to Marvel's storytelling in terms of what happens, not just what it looks like, you end up with problems.
I'm just going to push back a little bit in that I don't necessarily see that retconning necessarily as a problem. Part of this is trying to incorporate Alpha Flight into the larger Marvel universe and tying them more closely to Wolverine, his history, and tying more members of Alpha Flight and his interactions with them into that history, I think kind of makes sense. Obviously, this directly contradicts what's been on the page before, but I don't know. I get a little less annoyed with retconning if it serves a purpose than if it's just done because someone wants to write a certain kind of story, the characters be damned. But that's me.
That's a very good point, Tom. That brings us to issue number 52 of Marvel Comics Presents. Heather goes to Wild Child's last known address in civilian clothes over her suit without her helmet, and of course he's there. Of course, he absolutely almost murders her before she gets off a blast that knocks him out the window?
That seems to be what happens. He's slashing at her, she comments he cut through her circuitry, and then he's suddenly flying backwards out the window with no explanation as to how, other than her aiming her hand at him in the previous panel.
Yeah, this is a lot of Rob not being a writer, but being an artist.
Yeah, there isn't an energy blast. There isn't even an energy blast or suggesting like that's what hit Wild Child. It's a little clunky. Honestly, there isn't a lot in these issues that is clunky like that, so I can give it a bit of a pass. But it is a little weird. Either way, Wolverine then tussles with Wild Child saying, "You can save her or catch me," and Wolverine saves her, obviously. Conveniently without her knowing it was him, since, he's dead and all.
Moving on to issue number 53, Wolverine has tracked Wild Child for 11 days to the forests of the Yukon. They have a big battle. Wolverine kills a surprising amount of wolves. Wild Child gets cornered on a tree over a ravine. He and Wolverine tumble to the river, and Wild Child gets away to be hunted again.
And that's the plot. It's tight. It literally is probably less than a full comic in terms of pages and panels, but it tells a coherent story. Makes a really nice use of the movement from one issue to the next. Like the cuts are clean. It would be awkward in a full-size comic to do it that way. It's really solid. It's a good bit of characterization. Yes, it is a Wolverine focus, but it also, builds on the mythology already inside of Alpha Flight.
There, we've covered the plot. Now we can talk about the important stuff. Holy shit! This was plotted and drawn by Rob Liefeld, Tom.
Unexpected, to say the least. I'll say that.
It looked exactly like 90s X-Men comics looked.
Well, it's funny because as soon as I saw as Rob Liefeld, the first time we see Wolverine in a costume, I looked right for his feet. And I was not in any way disappointed. And that's not a criticism. That was the style. Like, obviously that turns into a whole meme and all that, but like, shit, man, that was a look. That was the look.
Little more context on Rob Liefeld for us. At this time, he had been working as a professional artist for less than 2 years. We are 4 months into his run on New Mutants that put him on the map, and we are at this time about 6 months from when he also takes over writing of that book from Louise Simonson, who listeners of a podcast like this understand that Wheezy's a big deal.
I didn't know that part of his, like, I don't know much about his
last,
professional
4
history.
or 5 issues of New Mutants are, and I'm making scare quotes here, written by Rob Liefeld, because Wheezy was like, oh, you want to give this artist so much say over these characters that I have spent almost 100 issues building up? Sure. And she wipes her hands clean of it. And he gets like 4 issues, or I'm not even looking up the exact number. He gets like 4 issues of New Mutants before it becomes X-Force. And we all know how X-Force goes in the first, half dozen issues.
Yeah, that was one of my first introductions to comics. Was those
we
initial
are the
X-Force
perfect
issues.
age of the people who came in during this tumultuous period.
Which is also why when I started reading these issues, I'm like, this feels familiar, because like it just does, like for our age and for what we were reading when it tracks in a way that Byrne's art looks of a certain era to me, but it's not one of great familiarity. It's just I can kind of place it. Other folks I can kind of place. Liefeld feels familiar. Like there's that emotional body remembers response to it,
Yeah. As a kid picking up X books off the rack, boy, I did not understand how much Rob was rewriting what it was that I was reading while I was reading it. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. I'd be curious to know how much distinction between plotting and scripting. What were the lines drawn there? Liefeld telling the story, and then Nicieza kind of getting into the granular how you do it. And because certainly if he's scripting it from a plot from Liefeld, then he's the one that's putting the words in their mouths. He's the one that's giving like the tone of the conversation and the tone of the relationships involved.
Yeah, the narration boxes, the actual word balloons and things, everything about that felt a little bit different than what the art was telling us. Did you pick that up?
A little, at times, yes. There were times where it synced up very well, but there were certainly moments where there was almost a cerebral remove and almost like over-explaining in some respects, via motivations and thoughts. But it never quite overstepped so far that it became disorienting. But yeah, there definitely is something. There is a little bit of a tension there. I don't dislike it. I find it kind of interesting, but yeah.
I could feel that the artist who is drawing the pictures we're looking at was trying to direct the story in a way that he got to draw the pictures he wanted to draw. And that's why the difference between plotting and scripting happens. Because I can totally see Rob being like, and then he comes at him like this, and describing the action. But the actual scripting of what people say, what people think, someone like Fabian is going to be a really good asset in taking that visual imagery that an artist comes up with and applying the emotional verbal connection to it.
I think it's possible that issue 53, the big fight in the wilderness between Wolverine and Wildchild, could have been either told purely via text or purely visually. Mm-hmm. And they come together well, but not perfectly. But it is interesting to me that you could have gotten away with a wordless issue, and you also could have gotten away with almost an imageless issue there.
Interesting that this could have gone either the Nuff Said route or the, Alpha Flight number, 5 with Snowbird, where it's not that it was Nuff Said, it was that there was no art.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, the combo of Liefeld and Nicieza here really makes it feel like the 90s are coming fast and hard.
Why Not Read Alpha Flight is brought to you by listeners like you who subscribe to our Patreon, and by the Excelsior Embroidery Company, part of the Roxxon family of corporations and therefore legally required to say it is proud to be building out the nation's largest network of privately held data centers, and also legally required to say it is not in any way involved in the AI images produced by Grok AI using Roxxon's data centers.
I love that you don't read the commercial until you're doing it live. I love that bit.
This week, Excelsior is proud to announce a new patch of Snowbird's tiara, Snowbird's headdress, whatever you want to call it. Check out this and hundreds more comic-inspired designs at excelsiorembroidery.etsy.com, where listeners of Why Not can use the coupon code WN503 to get 50% off any 3 items in the store. And people, I swear to God, folks, keep ordering things from Chris, Alpha Flight patches from Chris, and don't use the code. Use the code. It's there for a reason.
No, don't listen to him. That code cost me money. Damn it, Tom. Why Not Read Alpha Flight with Chris and Tom is recorded in Chicago, Illinois, and deep beneath Stately Baker Manor in a fashionable neighborhood outside St. Louis. It is written by Chris Baker, edited by Tom Flynn, with additional cat noises courtesy of Teeny the Needy Calico. Our theme song is Oh Canada by Five Iron Frenzy. New episodes are released every second and fourth Monday of the month at www.thewhynotpod.com and wherever you get your podcasts, where ratings and reviews are always welcome as a way to help our community grow. And we love hearing from our community. You can reach us on Blue Sky, Instagram, and by email at whynotehpod@gmail.com.